Welcome to Indian time again. This is the month of the geese, or This is the time where, in the past, this is the time when geese would return from the south, and as the people seen the geese flying in, it was a sure sign that it was the end of winter, and that warmer months was just right around the corner. So that was made a lot of the people happy, knowing that the hard winter months were over, and they could look forward to some nice weather and other things to do in their lives. As during the winter months, a lot of times the people didn't do much. They sat around and worked on different projects, preparing for the summer months that they weren't able to do, because the summer months are so busy that they don't have time to prepare and to make things. So the winter months were set aside to do these kinds of things. The winter months also was a time, like, as we know, utilized to tell stories, to visit, all those things that people were too busy in the summertime to do, because survival was very hard back in the early times. You had to prepare yourself on a daily basis to survive through the winter. So it was very, very busy times throughout from spring on through back to the winter months. And so winter months was, in a sense, kind of a time to relax and to tell stories and to visit. And these were the times the coyote stories were passed on to our younger children, who learned about the values of the Salish people, of do's and don'ts of life. So it was a time that it was quiet, but when this time of the year, the month of the geese, as the birds would start arriving back here from the wintering south, they knew that warm weather and good weather was just right around the corner. So it was a time for joy, knowing that the hard times were just about over as far as the winter months. The place name for this show is Sidlote, which means two small valleys, I guess, coming together to form one large one. Sidlote, and the place they call Sidlote around here is up there by, I believe, is right around the Paddy Canyon area. That area, that was one of the main areas where the Salish people camped and utilized the river and the area. As we all know, throughout the year, that Missoula area was a good place, good resources for bull trout, and for later on in the year, in May, that was one of the main areas that people went to dig bitterroot in that area. A lot of the area that people used to dig bitterroot is now under concrete or asphalt or under the big department stores. Those were the areas that the Salish people utilized. And this place was called Sidlote. The animal for this show is stan. Stan. It's kind of a long A sound. Stan, which means antelope. Antelope is an animal that, wasn't one of the main food sources around here, but it was when hard times were upon Indian people. Stan, the antelope was killed and eaten. Most of those animals were further east of here. So, but there were a lot of antelopes in this area before the development before people started moving into this area. The plant for this show will be mache, which is English name is glacier lily, mache. The glacier lily is known, is likely to be confused with other plants. It's yellow, and it's a nodding flower, and each of the distinctive distinctive curved petals that kind of curve over, and it raises from anywhere from 6 to 12 inches long. The stem is 6 to 12 inches long. Usually the wildflower inhibits sagebrush slope areas, mountain forests, and alpine areas. Its range extends from the British Columbia to Montana, south to Colorado and California. The bulbs are food for the Indian people. It's very it's kind of like I guess like a vegetable kind of thing. So the mache is the plant for this show. Next, I'd like to say a little bit about some of the events that are coming up that remind you that I think it's next week on March the 6th will be the monthly elders meeting. We're getting close to March, April, May, and then June will be our last meeting. Then the elders usually are out doing things the summer months. Also coming up on March, I keep saying May, trying to rush the season here. On March the 20th will be the cultural workshop down at the Longhouse. For those of you that are listening, I'd like to encourage you to attend these cultural workshops and let other people know. These workshops are for anybody that wants to learn a little bit about the Pend Oreille language, culture, and different things. But what we do is we have different groups of elders that set up at tables, and students come in and they'll select a group, and the elders will pass on the information that they have, whether it's language, whether it's constructing something. And for those students that are out there, if you have something that you're working on, if you're working on an outfit, if you're working on a dress, if you're working on anything that you're working on, and you need help and guidance on it, bring them on down. And the elders there will help you. Will show you how to do these things. Even if you don't know how, bring your material, and elders are there to help you. We also have sessions down there with some of our photographs that elders will help us as a culture committee identify for future use. We have a lot of photographs that we get donations that are shared by other people, and we add those to our archives, but we don't have a lot of the names, so the elders help us with those. The person, or guess the person that for this show that I would like to talk a little bit about is Charlo, or Chief Charlo, which is his Indian name was Simchekes, claw of the small grizzly bear. He was chief of the Bitterroot Salish, or the Salish people, from 1870 to 1910. And he was also the son of Victor, Chief Victor. Chief Victor's name was Huelchatzin, which means many horses. Chief Victor was a chief of the Salish from 1854 to 1870 when he passed away. And Chief Charlo was probably one of the last main chiefs of the Salish people, and he was part of the Treaty of 1855. And little is known about Charlo himself before he succeeded his father as head chief in 1870. Charlo's early days, like all the Salish in the 19th century, was based in the Bitterroot Valley of the southwestern Montana. Those were the areas of Bitterroot Salish that we know, and they're also known by some people as Flatheads, but the Bitterroot Salish, or the Salish people, again, their main areas before the Bitterroot was further east in the Three Forks area. Those were the areas that what is now the Bitterroot Salish were accustomed. Those were the mainstays of the Bitterroot Salish. And utilizing those days, because travel prior to the horses, they had to go out there to when they hunted buffalo used the buffalo jumps in that area. One of those buffalo jumps that they used was right there in the Madison, what they call the Madison buffalo jump, just west of Bozeman. There's an area there that was heavily used by the Salish people. Also other buffalo jumps that Salish people used. One of them is up in the Great Falls area, along this, close to the Sun River, which is called today it's called the Ullum-Pishkin buffalo jump. It's just, I believe it's north of Ullum, the little town of Ullum. And Pishkin is actually a Blackfoot word that means blood kettle, and that is referring again to the buffalo. And but prior to the Blackfeet, the Salish and Salish band, the Pend Oreille band of the Salish people, and the Tootnachen band, not to confuse with the Tootnacha. There's a Kootenai band of Kootenai people that call themselves a Tootnacha, but our elders, going way back, have talked about the Tootnachen a long time ago, who were almost wiped out by the smallpox, and a small band of that group of people, as they traveled from the Sun River up to what is now Browning, that area prior to being Blackfoot country, were in that area and then moved down into this area here, and they were just west of St. Ignatius was where their encampment was when they were again hit by the smallpox. And at that time, they, as Blind Mose would tell the story, they gathered all of their belongings and buried their dead people there that were killed from the sickness of smallpox, and they burned everything. And then they moved on further, moved south, and then they went out east. And it was just a small group left of this band, and as they moved further east, and as they got out there in the eastern part of Montana, again, that small group just kind of spread out and kind of blended in to other tribes out in the eastern part. And one of these people, kind of went into into the Shoshone tribe down there, Shoshone, who became chief down there, and became known today as Fort Washakie. Fort Washakie was actually named after Chief Washakie, and Chief Washakie, as the story is told, was a member of this last band of Tootnachen that was almost wiped out by the smallpox. And when he went into this tribe and stayed with this tribe, he became chief of that tribe. So there's connections, there's family ties between people down there and the people here. And with that, I'll take a short break here, and I'll be right back.
I really got wasted last night. I think I had a really good time with Tom. I just don't remember.
I've done that one before.
I hope they understand they have our future in their hands. If you choose to be sexually active, be safe, don't risk your life for a good time now. Native American women are fast becoming infected with STD and AIDS.
Welcome back to Indian Time, to the show, which is the which is the month of the geese. Again, repeating the place names, which is Sidlot, Sidlot, which is around the Paddy Canyon area. Sidlot, as I said, is two smaller valleys coming together and then making a bigger valley. Sidlot. The animal, stan, antelope, and the plant, mache, which is the glacier lily. And as I was talking about Chief Charlo. Before that, I would like to, some of the things that took place in the month of March, or was that on this month, on the 5th, which is actually will be tomorrow, in 1870, was the death of or Chief Victor. Was on that day Chief Victor passed away, and that's when Chief Charlo succeeded his father and became chief of the Salish, the Bitterroot Salish. And his name again is Ochkes Simche, or Simche Ochkes, claws of the grizzly bears. Also this month, on the 8th, or not the 8th, but on the 16th in 1884, on the passage of the General Allotment, or Dawes Act, setting in motion the allotment and the opening of the Indian reservation. That was a big change here to the Indian people. On the 17th on March in 1853, Isaac Stevens named the first governor and superintendent of Indian Affairs of Washington Territory, which included western Montana. And on the 20th in 1856, Jocko Agency was established near Arlee. On March the 22nd in 1847, Fort Kona, established near Post Creek by Frank MacArthur and Angus MacDonald of the Hudson Bay Company. On the 23rd of March, I don't know exactly, well, that's, I guess that's not the part of it. Also this month, I know it says, because of her age, I'd just like to announce that on the 13th of this month, one of the oldest Salish people here will be having her 92nd birthday, and that is Agnes Pokajim Paul. Her birthday is coming up on March the 13th. She will be 92. We're very, very fortunate and lucky to have people like Agnes to share her stories and to share those the history that she grew up with and that were told to her by a lot of her people, a lot of her parents and grandparents. So those are some of the things that took place this month. Going back to what I was talking to about earlier, I was talking about Chief Charlo. As I said earlier, that although little was known about Chief Charlo before he became chief of the Salish people in 1870, he was became a very important part of the tribes, and the tribes, although utilized a big, enormous, immense territory, and often made 2 trips east to the mountains to hunt the buffalo. The Salish suffered every time they went over there. They suffered heavily losses, deaths, because back there, the east of the Continental Divide, the Salish people would get into battles with other tribes because food was becoming so scarce that they would fight and battle over these areas. Also at that time, the Salish people, not only because of the battles and losing many people during the battles, they also were losing a lot of people, as I said earlier, to smallpox and to other European diseases. And this kind of, I guess, made them think that, that some of the leaders felt that they needed more help. And at that time, they heard about the Catholic priests, the black robes, who had, they had big medicine, they had powerful prayers. And so at that time, when the Chief Charlo, the Salish people sent, because of this, the losses that they were enduring through battle and through disease, that the Salish people felt that they needed some sort of help. And so they sent a lot of they said 4 delegations east to the mountains to St. Louis to try to bring these the priests, the Jesuits or the black robes here to help the Salish people, because they believed and they heard that they were very powerful people. The intent of the Salish at that time was to go to St. Louis and to bring the black robes here to help them in their losses, and they thought that their prayers and their medicine would help them, so they brought them here. And there was no intention of taking that to replace their medicine, to the Salish medicine, the medicine men and the women that were here. But they were going through such a tough time that they wanted more help, and that's why they brought the black robes here. They thought that would help, it would enhance the power that they already had. But as the black robes arrived here, they had a different idea. Their intent was to come here and to spread their religion. And in doing so, they almost destroyed the Salish people. And when they got here, they were trying to convince the medicine men and women that were here that what they were doing was evil and was bad, and that they needed to quit practicing that, they needed to get rid of that. And so a lot of those people were convinced to give their medicine bundles to the black robes, to the priest, and who buried them and put a cross over that. Little did the priest know the importance of these medicine bundles. Little did they know that these bundles, the medicine that was in these bundles, brought forward and helped the Salish people for thousands of years. This was a power that was given to the Salish people by the Creator to help themselves, and that's where the medicine men that were given these gifts, that were given these gifts so they could help their people. And when they were going through some tough times, they wanted to enhance that with the Jesuit, with the black robes medicine, not to replace it, but to enhance it. And so when the black robes got here, their intent was to do away with everything, to so-called civilize the natives that were here, not, excuse me, not knowing, not understanding the importance of that. So they almost destroyed a lot of the people that were here at that time. But so the practice went underground. The Salish people realizing what was happening, how important it was, they took their bundles and went underground and continued to practice. And luckily they did, because that's what built their strength and power back up and survived. And that enables us to be here today as Indian people, as Salish people. So luckily that happened. And a lot of people continue to practice that today, because that is a very big part of who we are as Salish people. And back in 1855, when Isaac Stevens was the first governor of the newly formed territory of Washington, the Washington Territory, formerly Washington Territory, this was part of where the Salish and Pend d'Oreille lived. And the church at that time, after the church and after realizing that they got into some bad feelings with the Salish people, they moved to what is now Eastern Washington. Prior to moving back here in 1841, in establishing, or excuse me, 1854, and establishing a church in St. Ignatius. And so some of those things, I guess I'd like to relate to you that those were part of history that continue to be part today. Although that the people, a lot of our people don't practice those things like they should to keep those alive, we still have a few people that are out there. And I would like to say that without those things that were passed down from generation to generation, we as Salish people would not be here today. And I see that we're just about out of time, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining me today. I hope you tune in again next show. And again, the words for today is Sloter, which is the place name, Paddy Canyon area, Staan, the antelope, Mache, the glacier lily, and again, Simchech Ochis, Chief Charlo, Lemsum Chpesia, Rest Schalchalt.